So next up is a panel discussion entitled People, Data, and Technology as Strategic Assets. We're fortunate today to have a cadre of experts from NGA to participate in this discussion, but I would like to welcome Mark Munsell, who's going to be our moderator for the panel today. He's the Chief Technology Officer at NGA, and in this capacity, he leads NGA's technology transformation and modernization efforts. In addition, Mark is the Deputy Director of the CIO and IT Services Directorate, where he oversees the Directorate's IT-related capabilities and services. And Mark is going to introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ooh. How are you? You guys are supposed to remove your badges, by the way, for the photographs. How are we doing today? We're happy to be here. We brought along some colleagues of mine that some of them are new to the agency, which is really special because it gives them the opportunity to offer an assessment of what they see in NGA and the community, and then hopefully bring some honesty to the conversation. At the far end, we have Dr. Andy Brooks. Dr. Brooks is our Chief Data Scientist. So in that role, he's responsible for a lot of the strategy of what our data scientists and data analysts will emerge into. He prepares the agency to create maximum value out of existing, new, and future forms of data. Responsible for delivering high-impact geospatial data science-related intelligence capabilities to decision makers. I've worked with Andy now for about a year. How long have we worked together?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. And it's a special thing to work with him, to see the interaction. And Deepak's very similar. When he comes in and interacts with us, to sort of be amazed, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. So it'll be very interesting to hear Andy's perspective on where we're at in terms of data science and where we're at with the overall technology state of NGA. I also have a long-term colleague, Jeanne Stacey of the Data Core. I'll mention too that Andy was fundamental in founding the Data Core in NGA, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Jeanne Stacey I've worked with over the years, going back into the enterprise architecture, going back probably 10, 12, 15 years with Jeanne. She's the senior data leader of NGA, founding member of the Data Core. She manages the NGA Data Core Enabler Division, which is a team of about 40 data scientists, analysts, engineers, and data stewards, and guides them in using the data to improve mission enabler functions in the agency. She is the author of the NGA Unified Data Strategy, which I'm very familiar with, remember that, and is currently leading the Data Core in designing, developing, and deploying data science solutions. And our newest colleague, Mr. Deepak Kundal, he's NGA's new Chief Data Officer. And Deepak serves as our CDO. He's got progressive, technical, hands-on experience throughout his entire career. And I'll point out that both Deepak and Dr. Singh, who I think is also here with us, stand up, Dr. Singh, would you? Our two most recent hires in NGA, and specifically, yeah, that's right, specifically hired these gentlemen because of their hands-on, progressive, technical experience in the both industry and some government over the years, and it really brings a different angle to the conversation. So we're very, very happy to have Deepak, and we're going to kick this off with the overall theme of this panel. It started with me throwing an idea out there that I wanted to talk about software as a strategic asset, and what that means and what it means to NGA, what it means to the broad community. And quickly they said, well, why would we stop there? Why don't we talk about people, in particular our technical workforce as a strategic asset, as well as data as a strategic asset, and of course all in the context of the NGA strategy to include partnerships, relationships, and everything else that comes with it. So what I'd like to do is start off with the whole concept, definition of what we mean by anything that's a strategic asset, right? And so this is something that we value as an organization. It would be something that we invest in. It's something that if we don't take care of, right? If we don't take care of, it'll lead to a failure of the organization. And that's how we see our technical workforce. That's how we see the data. And that's how we see technology and software. So that's the theme of this conversation today. It's not really going to be a moderated panel. It's going to be a conversation amongst these technologists and their current state of NGA and the current state of the community. So let me start it off with, I'll start with Dr. Brooks. And if you want to just give us a little bit about what we think about our technical workforce at NGA, and are they a strategic asset, and what we envision in the future of developing them as a strategic asset.
Yeah, so let me answer that. So great to be here. It's great to have a nice big audience for folks with this. My background a little bit from Mark is I joined about a year and a half ago, founded, led the data core, now work, as Mark mentioned, more on the broader data strategy. And what is that, right? And I go, well, data science is people leveraging technology to create value out of data. And that's my job, is like figure that part out and what we're doing. Key part of my work I look at is my lens of doing work comes from my prior work. So I was in industry and research and academia, looking at organizations and working for startups and other organizations based out in San Francisco who are creating value out of different forms of data. And so much of the success that I saw in that started with the people who were doing that work, and the people who are consuming the products that were coming out of that. That's my lens of going into things. It's a little bit of a flip. Oftentimes data or technical folks will start with, well, what's the technology, and then back up. I go, no, let's really understand, what are we creating? What's our mission, right? According to whom? For a door kicker, I'll call it, or a warfighter, or a first responder, and then backing into what is our workforce and our tools, and how are we creating our people inside to do that. Since being in the agency for a year and a half, been impressed considerably with the technical tradecraft knowledge of our folks. For truly understanding what is going on in the world at a certain moment in time and why that's important, we've got that. We have amazing pockets of technical skill inside the agency itself, doing what I'll call a whole range of data science, right? So like data science is, sure, artificial intelligence, machine learning, NLP, buzzwords over here. And then it is also, too, data science is like pulling stuff out of spreadsheets and using structured data and doing all of that. And what I've been really amazed with is there's this broad spectrum of folks to work with to create value, right? And it's one of like us as an agency, or an amazing opportunity for us is like, how do we align data and technology and policies and things to help every single one of those users for us? There's an immediate return with creating a super high-speed compute environment for a data scientist writing new algorithms. There's tremendous value in working with an analyst to pull data out of a spreadsheet and to structure it and then label it and do other things. All of those are tremendous opportunities for us, which is just great, because it's like no matter where we put our chips, so to speak, we can get quick wins out of those efforts.
So Jeanne, there's a kind of playing off that a little bit, and about our folks. You've had direct experience with hiring a lot of new data scientists. I've had the experience of hiring a lot of new software developers in the agency, and it's a very unique position to be in. Mm-hmm. And if you could talk a little bit about what that's been like over the last year, and more importantly, the challenge of providing the right environment and then keeping them. I'll just say that.
Keeping them engaged and challenged, looking for interesting problems, and then motivating them, because there's a great need in the agency to, I would say, advance our data literacy. And so, we have some cutting edge, really creative, super talented scientists. We have some people who are totally motivated, some of them former contractors that have been around NGA for a while, really understand the cultural challenges for working with data at NGA, the frustrations, and understand where those barriers are and how to help break those barriers. That's why I'm so excited to have our partner, our new chief data officer, to help us with some of those barriers. And then we have some people who are coming in with tremendous talents and want to learn about our mission and want to. So we have a lot of very motivated learners. And so I guess your question was like, how do we keep them engaged, or what have been the challenges? I think,
and what
yes,
it means,
we have.
What it means to sort of grow them.
Yeah.
And grow them inside of a government agency. And
so, and we take our model, like Andy walked in and, we were challenged in the beginning to do some of the really fancy stuff, but what I'm finding is there's a lot of basics, right? So like I talked about, we have a cultural challenge with working with data inside the agency. So getting back to those basics, building out our catalog, helping people use the things that have been there but maybe got a little dusty, not just the shelfware and the documentation, but like the tools, things that were built and where we tried to lay a foundation, but because we're not really interacting around at the data level, they're not really cutting edge. So we've got a lot of opportunity to grow that. And meanwhile, we're leveraging the fact that most of the people who applied and came to the agency are coming because of the mission. So they care. So that's been very satisfying. We have a great team of people, some of whom are out in the audience right now, and just they're very dedicated. So they've put up with some challenges, and we're making quick advances. The other thing, we have our team that's facing each one of, like HR, like my team is facing each one of each one of our branches is facing like HD, FM, but we also have an IT-facing branch, and there's some creative opportunities there to help advance the environment. So.
Yes, and we appreciate that in my directorate, the help that we get from the data core and just looking at our data, the IT directorate's data in a different light. And it's been real powerful and good.
Yeah.
So Deepak,
Where Jamie is.
so as far as people go, we've already had some conversations about who we have in the agency and what they do. And I know when you came in, you asked some questions like who are our database engineers, who are our data administrators, database administrators, what tools are they using? And you were just asking all these questions, and we're kind of like, well, we got some of that.
Absolutely.
But I think the point you were making in asking those questions was, where's the active career field of data expertise? Where people that are experts in Elastic or experts in Mongo or experts in any kind of relational database, and where are they, and how, and can you talk to them?
Absolutely, and of course the answer came back to me in reference to so all of these center of excellences are distributed throughout the agency. So first and foremost, in just talking to Andy and Jeanne over here. So the first things as soon as I came aboard about this would be my eighth week on the job. So first things first, was to actually take a look at the already established policy. Specifically in terms of data policy, which was I would consider that to be like a fundamental paradigm shift in the way we actually think about data from an agency perspective. So that was always a challenge. To really educate, to really start to actually engaging with all the levels of NGA to really start treating data as not only just agency-wide asset, but as an IC asset. So that was actually very heartwarming to see given Admiral Sharp so actually talks about this to be able to inculcate this feeling into the NGA as a culture, and that's what's going to actually drive us to be able to get into more highly skilled type of labor force. And it just happened to be, so I was in one of the conversations with HD, and we were talking about a specific job description for data architect, and when they were talking about JD of this specific role, so it was like off the charts. I said, well, it really needs to be aligned to what technical focus or the technical expertise so that a specific architect is going to bring to the table in terms of being able to profile the data on the ingest, in being able to model the data. So I would say it's a work in progress, and so hopefully, so with the correct team in place, so we will be able to march them towards Admiral Shop.
Deepak's a little bit like you remember the movie Big when he leaned over the cube and said, "Hey, you need to slow down over there." Deepak's moving a little bit fast for us right now, so. You need to slow down a little bit, Deepak.
He's
Gotcha.
asking
No,
great
Deepak,
questions.
don't slow down.
Yeah,
No,
don't slow down. He's asking
slow
great
down.
questions.
Don't slow down.
Mark,
Don't slow down.
Mark wants him.
I have a few speeding tickets myself. So we'll kind of wrap up the people section here for a little bit. This This is an interesting problem that we as an agency have been trying to tackle now for a few years. And, it was said a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago, when we sort of started the idea of, hey, we should hire more technical people, right? You sort of hear people whispering, oh, we got technical people. And we do. We have brilliant analysts, brilliant scientists in our agency. And we have brilliant program managers. And we have a lot of very, very smart technologists in our agency. But the point being, by hiring, I'll say builders. I'll use that term. I know Amazon likes to use that term a lot. Builders, makers, people that know when presented the right environment and presented a problem, they can make things, right? We set out to hire those people a couple years ago. And it's been really important for a couple reasons. I'll say by hiring some software developers, right? We were up to about 50 or so now. And people are like, well, what can you do with 50 software developers? That's like one project, right? That's like one thing. But I'll tell you what we can do. When we get the software developers and we get the data core and we get them in the room with our program managers and we get them in the room with the people that know what the requirements are and what we're trying to build, they bring something special. Even if they're not actively building that software, they bring, right, the knowledge of what's possible. Right. And when that's in the room, there's magic that happens, because somebody, an engineer or a requirements person might say, we want to do this. And when the software developer says, oh yeah, we can do that. And let me tell you how we can do that. That changes the conversation at that moment in time, and it changes the conversation with industry. So when we go back to you and talk about what we want to do, we can say, hey, we can go a little bit deeper on our requirements. We can tell you that we want it in the cloud, we want it on this platform, and we want you guys to bring the code in this way. And all that conversation completely changes the direction of what our agency is trying to do. And so it's a very powerful thing. And I think as we manage these people, they're special people. As we manage these people and treat them like strategic assets, they'll be one of the most powerful assets that NGA has, and it'll be very powerful for you all to work with them in industry. Jeanne, do you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I do, actually. We talked a little bit about, we touched on this a little bit. So Mark has the software developers, we have the data professionals, and one of the things that I'm seeing over and over again, we've employed this model of where we're solving problems, small problems throughout the agency, and we're adding value. And in adding value and in that collaboration, Mark, I think we not only brought in the 40 or 80 or so people, 100 and some odd people, that have these skills that are sort of updated skills, or I forget the term they were using this morning, but I thought that was a great term. But what we're doing, we're seeing this like aha moments across existing agency workforce, and that to me is the data literacy, the advancement of the data-enabled workforce, because it's not only the people we've hired, but it's the people now who are seeing data problems solved in new and ways that they couldn't have imagined. And I think that's the point you're trying to make, is we are changing our own workforce, and then that makes them, being more educated, able to go out and put something on contract. And like Deepak and I were talking about, looking for impacts across contracts, but they feel differently, and they can understand the problems differently and solve the problems with new insights.
Perfect, Jeanne.
So
we did get a couple questions, and this one particular question is completely appropriate at this moment in time, so I want to bring it up. And it's for the whole panel. But I think you just answered it, and I think I just answered it beforehand, but I just want to read it to make a point. How will NGA ensure that its software, that as it develops applications, it, A, maintains the applications long-term, fair enough, there's something called DevOps, so we can talk about that for the next hour if you want to, or B, doesn't compete with industry, which is forbidden by the FAR? That's a very, very good question. I think you just answered it, and I think I just answered it,
right.
Which is when you have, so we have government program managers, right? That know the FAR, know the rules, and know how to manage a program, know how to manage the intricacies of multiple vendors working together to build something. But to have a software engineer advising them, that knows what the art of the possible is, that knows how to build things, that knows how you should build things, and more importantly, that is subscribing to NGA's implementation guidance on how to build things, because we do have a strategy. We do have something in some place we're trying to go, and we want to work with you.
Right.
We want to work with you to help us get us there.
Right.
It's not your strategy.
It's our strategy. It's our strategy, right?
Yeah,
And we're helping the agency workforce understand it better, grow as integrators. If we only know the farm, we're spending a lot of time understanding what rules and guidelines we have to stay within, right? We're expanding our workforce's understanding of what that possibility is and the value.
And I know, at times we haven't conveyed it clearly, and that's definitely, we can do better at that. But the more that we can get you involved in that environment, working with us, the more flexible we'll be, the faster we'll be,
right.
and the more powerful we'll be when we learn from each other. Right. So I just wanted to do that question right then and there. Feel free to, if you want to keep going down that line, we can. Let's talk a little bit about data.
Sure.
This is always the focus here at GEOINT. I think we've been saying data is the key, is the center of everything we do for the last 20, 25 years. But we really haven't treated data as a strategic asset. We really haven't, and it's something that we are shifting. We have a data strategy. We have now teams of data scientists and data engineers, and our focus now is to try to converge data, and try to get it to the point where we treat it like it's we treat it like an asset that it should be across the entire enterprise, including the IC. So. Deepak, if you just want to expand on a little bit about that, what you think, what some of the steps are, what some of the philosophies are of treating data like that, and then we'll go down the line.
Sure, absolutely. So I had an opportunity to actually work with all the IC based the CDO council. Actually, so we are actually coming together as a team and really identifying as to what are going to be the ground rules or the bases in which we actually start to share data across the ICs. Across the entire spectrum of the IC, and that was the longest pulling trend. To actually get to a point where we can actually understand the common terminology, common language that we can actually share across the IC. That was and that was the biggest challenge. But once we got over that specific hump, so now we are at a point where we can actually successfully say that we've actually successfully identified specific 5 types of entities. That are going to be shared and shared across the IC community through the attribute level distribution. So what does it mean to be an organization, or what does it mean to be a device, or what does it mean to be kind of a co-location anywhere in the world? So that's what the focus has been. And as we actually have been talking, trying from the industry perspective too, Mark. So we are actually seeing that there has been a natural progression from machine learning to human intelligence, and then from focusing on the content of the data to really context of the data, and then so how do we? So we keep on talking about the scale of the data, but we should also be focusing on the depth of the knowledge that can be extracted out of the data. So so those are some of the key factoids that's been coming up in our CDO council and throughout the IC agency.
Hey Andy, let me use this question. Go ahead. Okay.
Just real one.
Yeah.
The one I look at it is just for the agency is getting the model of data being an asset is not one where it's just okay, here it is and it sits there, right? Because we're sitting on mountains of historic data about things, right? And what I look at as strategy-wise is okay, how do we increase the value of that asset, right? Very simple, straightforward ones. You go, okay, well, it's existing imagery that we've got. We have a sense of what it is. It has metadata associated with it. Great. Let's go through and label it and tag it even better. That's a new type of asset that could be there, right? So looking at that, extending the value of the data that we have by adding metadata to it. Why is that important? Well, you want to do things with machine learning, et cetera, go down you're going to need a whole lot of labeled data, right, to be able to do that. So boom, you've taken something that is an asset for the agency that's just kind of sitting there, put some work into it to get greater value out of it going forward. That's one way. Second way for data as an asset is looking at, a sense of what all of our data is, understanding fundamentally those inside the agency, how they use the data, how it's valuable to them, to our mission partners, to others, I will say, how they use the data, and then understand for ourselves, there may be certain times where it's like, well, they can create more value out of it than we can right now. Right. So going to like Sharp's goals, for our strategy 2025, this comes to the partnership part. How can we use partnerships to take a data that has value as an asset and provide it to somebody else so that they can create value out of it in some way? There's a whole lot of details to work out there, right? It's really hard to do that, but it's possible. And that's one of the lenses that I look at for data as an asset, not just the labeling part and making it available for us inside, but looking at how do we make it available to other people, other folks, other stakeholders in the IC and more broadly for whatever their mission might be.
Yeah,
Andy, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, and I would just add, it makes more sense to me now that I understand the NGA strategy and his emphasis on partnership. Because I think, the more, as we build those partnerships, then we look back and we say, okay, so this new way of using the data or the new use for the data through the partnership, are we actually applying, getting the most out of the asset, right? And then the other thing I'd just add to that, both of what you guys were saying, once we understand what needs to be done and we've got the data set up to be the asset with its use, how do we integrate that? And then how, like when I look to partnerships, especially with industry, what are the pipelines for that data? Like, and how we can plan to integrate that so that it gets quickly used in the environment.
And to add to your point, Andy, so as we talked about it in our a couple of the meetings ago, so that being able to identify that specific use case that we're actually trying to solve for, that becomes extremely absolutely imperative to be able to really get down to the level of the knowledge. So that means actually you may have to actually, as an agent of change, be in a position and not be afraid to be able to go out to the analysts and really sit with them and really take a look at the job he does like day in and day out. And that's the only, so in my opinion, our best way to really understand as to like what type of actions that our specific individual is doing and what are the specific challenges that he or she is facing. And then you actually process that inwards as to like how we can actually solve this specific problem through analytics as well as data.
Very good. I do have a question that we can sort of hopefully come off of here. It was directed to you, Andy, but we'll open it up to the panel. People and technology are usually not as challenging as policy. As a data scientist, what do you see as the greatest policy challenge? Whoever wants to take it.
Greatest policy challenge.
So I can see this with security policy and IDAM and ABAC and the policies that we need in place to be able to implement data, getting to the right people, the right place. So we can. That's obviously a very, very broad policies, and there's all kinds of security policies that are associated with that. So we can go that direction.
I think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I thought he was looking.
Okay. I would say the greatest policy challenge is not really one of the policy challenge, because it's like the things that we're facing, we have certain legal guidelines that we have to follow. Got it. We do that. We follow those sorts of things. What I look at is the greatest policy challenge is finding the right group of stakeholders to have in that room to talk about what the policy should be, right? And having an informed community of folks who can come with that idea of Mark was saying is people who can build and create. That's just not a technical thing, right? And it's just like, there's not just people who build hardware or software, it's building new policy, so it's finding that right community of folks to have in that room to have that conversation about how are we going to create whatever that X policy is. Going back to the example I had, like with partners and sharing data with them, there's all sorts of policies that would have to come out of that, right? And what I look at is like, we're not the only ones in the intelligence community facing those sorts of things or in the federal government. And this is one where I go like in my roles, finding other title counterparts like myself and being like, what are you guys doing, right? Like, how is this working? As well as working in industry as well with what other people are doing. This is not a challenge that I think we really face alone. There's certain contextual things with the IC that, yes, we do. So we have to do things a certain way. But outside of that, we can build off of what's going on in industry. So it's not really like, what's the one policy that I would need to be able to do whatever it is? No. It's getting that right group of people to figure out that balance between What does the mission need? What does the user need? What is the legal requirements? What are the policies inside the agency for using data? What is the workforce? Having that conversation.
Yeah, I would. I think cross domain is a great example, right? We're trying to go across from different security domains to and from, and in the IT directorate, we get a lot of pressure to create these cross domain solutions because I just want to send my data from the high side down to secret, or I want to send it from on class up to secret, and Mark, can't you just make that happen? And the infrastructure is in place. And we comply with all the policies. All the security policies, it's there. The problem is the data, right? We need to know what the releasability of the data is. We need to know the classification of the data, and we need to know it sometimes down to the attribute level, to the row column level. And you can't just send data through without knowing what the attributes of the data are according to the policy.
So as I sit here and I think about, what my challenge, what I see as a challenge for that is not necessarily a specific policy, but it's maybe a lack of response to what is in place. So how do we get people to think about, like we talk about it on Data Core, the stewards, right? So we have a stewardship role on Data Core, but we are not the stewards of the data. The people who are authorized to work with the data, whether it's contract data, type of mission data, are they really empowered to make, well, they shouldn't be making decisions about it, but are the stakeholders really identified to help them change so that we can weigh in on what those releasability rules could be or should be under different contexts, right? Yeah. So maybe it's not a policy specifically, but it may be a lack of the way we're implementing policies.
And then, of course, the stewardship program has to be empowered, to be able to make the changes and suggest the changes as per the suggestions that are coming in. So it's got to be like a two-way street.
Right.
Again, collaboration is the key over here.
Yes, exactly. And, we have a stewardship role, but on Data Core, it's more of a facilitative role versus we're not owning any of that, where we don't have that data as we're not authorized users of that data. We're just facilitators.
Okay. Let's. I want to leave about 5 minutes at the end for more questions. So let's. I want to move to the last piece here. We're saying technology is a strategic asset. I want to make sure that part of the conversation is software as a strategic asset, because that's kind of where we started in our conversation before we even decided what we're going to talk about here at the panel. And so typically when I'm thinking of software as a strategic asset, I'm thinking of the billions of dollars, right? The billions and billions of dollars that our agency has spent on either commercial software off the shelf or software that we've developed. Billions and billions and billions. That's at least 3 billions. And if we treated it as a strategic asset from the beginning, where is that software today? And how do we keep it? How do we maintain it? How do we protect it and value it as that strategic asset? Do we throw it away? Do we bring in new? How do we change the paradigm of the way? I feel really I feel really sorry for software. We've treated it so poorly. In our agency, about 95% of what we do is somehow related to software. Everything that we do in the agency, it's on that screen, is somehow related to software. How do we treat software better?
I would say I'm going to start off with from the so I bring in the industry to perspective. The whole concept of fail fast, that has to be adopted. So I'm not going to be attaching myself to any software tool. So if it works, that's great. If it does not, so I need to be in a position to be able to throw it away very quickly. And that's how our new architecture gives us the capability. Specifically if you're talking from the perspective of containerization, Kubernetes, and the list just goes on. The microservices architecture. So those are some of the key concepts. So that actually allows us, to be able to create software at pace, aligned to what the business is actually asking for, and take it for a test drive, use it, and if it works, that's great.
Deepak,
Yeah,
do
lessons
you love
learned.
software like I love software?
I do.
Okay.
So that's the reason I'm saying fail fast. Andy,
Well, I would say I would build on that is one of that mindset of, whether it's fail fast or whatever, tight iterative loops, but more on that is having a close understanding and relationship with the software, which gets kind of philosophical at a certain point, but it's just one of like really understanding how our users are engaging with it, what works and what doesn't work. And when stuff doesn't work, we identify why it doesn't work and kill it, or we change it and we adapt it and have that, and rather than continue down the path of using, I'll just call it software, air quotes, that we know the users don't want, we know the users don't like it, things like that. And you kind of go, it's like in the magical world of like, well, you could just kill it and get rid of it. Well, there's all sorts of like policy issues and contractual issues with doing that. And what I would like us to get to is that spot where we kind of just like embrace the awkwardness of those weird things and being like, yeah, that contract's terrible. We got to change that because we're not meeting the needs for our folks. So it's one of like, to Mark's question of like, what was it? How do we treat software better? I think it's just better understand it and the people who have how they interact with it and how they use it as a tool, and make sure that software is in service of the people and what they're trying to do, like in their work. And if it's not, revisit what that software is doing.
True.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to see it closer to the people who are actually trying to use it. So if we have a data scientist that can be at home or at school and working with something, I would love for them to be able to do the same thing here in our environment. And that's just a challenge that we continue to have.
Yeah. So a couple of things have led me to this, the intrigue with software, and one of them is so software that we write over and over and over and over again, right? So as vendors, as software engineers and scientists, there are things that we just rebuild over and over again, and it might be in our own stack our own technology stack that we put together, and it might be special to us, right? But I'll use example to read and read the metadata out of a native header for all of you people that have ever done this before out here, you software engineers that have done it. So we pay for that over and over and over again in all the different software packages and all the applications that we do. And to treat software right would be to do it once and do it well, and have everyone contribute to it,
And catalog.
review it, and then reuse that software. Either reuse it in a sense of like a code repository, reuse it, or use it as a service, which is more and more and more. We're adding more and more of those kinds of services to our suite of services at NGA. And so that's what I mean by treat software as a strategic asset. We wrote that software about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Some of you probably wrote it. And it's the same software today, but we've paid for it over and over and over again. And what we can do as a collective is we can make it better. We all can contribute to it. And then there's thousands and thousands of things that in NGA and in the community that we've done that are strategic assets that we need to take advantage of as we move forward as a collective, so that we all can get further and faster. So not just one company, one agency, that has the lock on whatever, but that we all share in this great strategic asset of the things that we have built over the last 30 years and build upon. Because moving forward, right, that's how the industry is doing it. And we can all collectively use that as a strategic asset. Anyone?
Well, I think again it comes back to the environment, right? I hadn't thought of that, but I think that makes perfect sense. I've seen NITIF used and then reused for many purposes with different kinds of data, and I've seen us kind of meddle with the header and sort of adopt it for new uses. So I think that makes perfect sense. I don't know how NITIF is maintained right now. Or if there is an environment around.
I just use it as an example.
But it's a great example because it is a perfect example of the reuse of software.
I think there's plenty of guys out there that want to throw away NITIF too right now, so that's
whatever.
fine as well.
It is a good example. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Well, it was one that I would add is like, I'll riff off of the software part, is looking instead, and we'll loop technology, we'll consider broadly, like with algorithms, right? So we're going to be writing, say, new computer vision algorithms and things like that. And it's one of like, will we repeat what we have just discussed here and how we do that? And it's like, we recognize the challenges of doing this, and are we going to reinvent and redo algorithms over and over and over. And I go, I hope we can't. Like, we shouldn't do that. We can't do that. It's dangerous for us to do that. And it's one of solving or addressing and solving these types of challenges, seeing software as an asset as we look into other forms of technology as an asset. It's going to be increasingly important for us to do that soon.
Okay, I got a couple more questions that are related to this conversation. So we'll do this. You talked about your feelings for software, but NGA really values your talents, and so this is to all of you, to your talents as well. What are you doing to cultivate and empower the people asset? I think this is a very, very important question, and I think, and I don't want to delineate it between government employees. I mean, that's kind of the sense that I get here from our conversation with this, but it's also our contract partners that work with us, and how do we also empower them to do what we're talking about here, because that shouldn't be lost on this crowd. I hope it's not. The companies here, they have software engineers that want to do this, what we're talking about. They want to use GitLab. They want to come in and use the cloud. And they want to use all the modern tools and develop in a way in a shared environment where they share code and build off of each other. That's the way modern software engineering happens today. So this isn't just about us and what we're trying to do in the government. This is about the entire community and what the agency can do to enable all that. And so how we treat them, the environment that we give them, and how we enable them is the absolute most important thing that we're talking about up here today.
So I just want to call out Jamie Nichols is one of our Data Corps branch chiefs, and what makes Data Corps fun is we are working on creating value for the mission, whatever part of the agency that is. And we were just talking this morning about how can we put together a part of our data environment to sort of be multi-tenant, right, if you will. That was the term that he was using. And I really liked it because it allowed us to have sort of lanes that we can do development on for specific problems, but then pool into like that common repository of algorithms, whatever, pick it. Is it a data asset? Is there an inventory of data? Is it the set of algorithms? Do we break apart NITIF and recreate it in there? So we can all kind of collaborate in that environment. So I think it comes down to having that tool. And then just to go back to the people part, when we all, like, I've watched it over and over now on Data Corps with we call them internal customers, but watching those aha moments, we are developing our people because we're motivating them to kind of, the walls are breaking down around the lack of wanting to work with the data scientists, and they're more open to going further with education, maybe modifying a Python script, So I think we're moving forward. I don't want to take up the whole
2 minutes, gentlemen.
Real quick, what I would say is on the people front is two things. One that I do, you've kind of heard it in my voice track through this, is one of making sure, what do I do in my work to stay close to the people, is like spending time with the people, right? And that sounds cheesy, but it's really is going, when I'm at NCE, I'm based in San Francisco, so this is a challenge sometimes, but when at NCE or NCW, is spending time with our users and truly understanding, I mean users in a consumer sense, but like our users and understanding what their needs are and what that's like right then. Right? And truly going is like, what's it like to be someone on the end of making a decision with one of our tools, right? And having a certain level of empathy for those folks, knowing the history of who they are, knowing them by name, right? I can list off Brian, I can list off Kristen, Tanya, all these real folks, right? So when it comes time to making decisions about what data we're going to collect, how we're going to do it, software and things like that, that there's someone specific in my mind that I can go to who can validate that or question that or challenge that. They're one of my stakeholders, like in that sort of sense, doing that. And you kind of goes like, well, how do you extend that? And that's the one of when I can share those stories with the outside community, academia, research, the media, things like that. I do that as much as I possibly can. How can you most closely understand who our people are and what their needs are? And for folks who are outside building software and tools for us, demonstrate that you've done that. Right? Really demonstrate that you understand who our users are, what the value is, and the decision makers, particularly those who are in the, say, if something doesn't work, they're on the sideways end of something, right? It's just like, how do you get as close as possible to those folks and be sure anything that we're doing here is enabling them to be able to make and do their job better.
Deepak?
And the key over here is going to be collaboration. I mean, so the concept of Mr. Jeanne is actually talking about. So we've actually deployed that very successfully at NGA. So where we are able to identify a specific problem, and then irrespective of our job titles, and so we just come together as a team and really drop the problem and like turn this problem inside out and actually work on like all the elements all together as a team. And so that's the key concept over here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last statement to make. As the Chief Technology Officer of NGA, fairly new Chief Technology Officer of NGA, I do have a number one priority, and that is to enable and remove the barriers, right? But to enable the builders and makers, not just inside of NGA, that includes all of our vendors, all of our contractors, all of our industry partners, to enable you to build things better than we have today. Thank you.